Welcome back to the Serving Second podcast, where we help second chair leaders create first place outcomes. I'm your host, Dr. Toussaint Williams, and I have over 20 years of experience serving in the second chair. The best way you can help this show grow is to follow Serving Second wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Serving Second Podcast. Please listen, share it with another second chair leader, and subscribe to be sure to comment below so more people can find us. Today's guest is a good friend of mine, Seth Yelorda. He's a leadership coach, a renowned keynote speaker, and a strategist known for helping leaders lead with clarity, alignment, and purpose. Seth's work centers on cutting through confusion, building strong teams, and helping leaders move people forward with intention. Many of you are expected to bring clarity to teams without owning the final decision. You translate vision, you align people, you steady culture. Seth understands that tension and speaks directly to it. So if you serve as an assistant, an associate, a vice president, or a right-hand leader, this episode will give you language, mindset, and tools to lead well from where you serve. Let's dive in. Seth, thank you so much for joining the Serving Second podcast. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm good. I am glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Man, listen, I'm so excited. We've connected, man, it's been almost 20 years since it's been over 20 years since we've,
Yep.
known each
Yep.
other and watched the journey. And I've just been sitting here like, man, I am excited to kind of finally have you slow down from all your keynote trips and all that stuff to sit down with us and just kind of share. Man, so just real quick, I've known you for a while, but there's some people on here that are hearing you for the first time. Tell us about your background and what was your vision or your why in creating Vision Clarity?
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me. My background is in ministry. So I got started pastoring small churches in Mississippi. And it was through roughly around 15, 16 years of pastoral ministry, both in the senior pastor role and in the executive pastor role, where I just fell in love with leadership development, organizational development, culture, climate. How do we actually help teams and leaders develop thriving organizations? And so somewhere along the way, I decided to go back to school, get my MBA. And then I realized, you can have a high level of business acumen, but that doesn't necessarily translate to leadership effectiveness. So how do you actually grow and develop leaders? So I went back to school, started working on my PhD in organizational psychology because I wanted to have the tools to be able to speak to organizations and organization leaders to really help them clarify where they're going, empower their members, inspire their team, remove the roadblocks, really build an extraordinary organization that's led by extraordinary employees. And so along that 15, 16-year journey of me being a pastor, I also started my own consulting practice where I was reaching out to all of my pastor friends who were leading congregations themselves. And I went in and did some trainings for their team, strategic planning for their churches. And then over the years, it just grew and developed into what it is now, where now I have the privilege of serving not just the faith community, but also healthcare, education, nonprofit, manufacturing, corporate. And I'm just really blessed to see how God has led me in this path. And there's a lot more I still want to do, but I'm extremely grateful and have a lot of gratitude for my journey. And really, I'm just so grateful that my journey started in ministry and started in the local church. I feel like that really gave me a foundation for life and for my professional life, how I see the world and see people. And so that's just a little bit about my journey, where I've been and kind of how I've arrived at where I am today.
Man, Seth, and again, I want to make sure for our listeners, Seth is not just somebody who studied leadership or studied serving in the second chair. He served it, having served in as an
Yep.
associate pastor for several years and now kind of pushing forward with this vision clarity. Now, Seth, I really appreciate this because this is important for me as one of the reasons why I got into this serving second process was that vision ambiguity in that, okay,
Okay.
my role or kind of identifying, between, the first chair and the second chair and other
Yep.
roles. And so my first question for you, for the person who serves second right now, the question would be, how would you lead with clarity when someone else sets the direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. So clarity is not something that just happens at the executive level. Clarity is also something, and let me take a step back. Clarity is not just something that happens at the organizational level, but clarity is also something that happens at the personal level. And so a lot of times when we say leading with clarity, we often think organizational vision, organizational mission, organizational values. You need to have that level of clarity. And yes, that is a part of it, but that's not all of it, right? So there is also the personal clarity. The way that I define clarity, it is the discipline of knowing where you're going and who you must become every day to lead yourself and others towards that future. And so if we just unpack that definition, it is the discipline of knowing where you're going. That knowing where you're going does have both organizational implications and personal implications. Like, who are you as a person? Right? What are your gifts? What are your strengths? What are your passions? What are your interests? What are your skills? What knowledge and habits have you formed and picked up along the way? And if you don't know that, then the organizational clarity, it's going to be just muddled and muddy. Like, that's not going to help you. So it really starts with the discipline of knowing where you are going. Who am I? Where am I going? Right? From a personal level, right? What is the call of God upon my life personally? And then it asks the question, okay, in light of where I feel I am going, who must
Mm,
I become to lead myself, primarily self leadership, and then to lead others, team leadership, organizational leadership towards that future? So when we talk about leading with clarity, I don't want people to think that it's just organizational. It starts foundation. If you think about a pyramid, the very first foundation of that pyramid, that solid rock, stage one, step one, is self leadership, self awareness. What are your gifts? What is your call? What are your abilities? Do you know that? Are you clear on that? And if I'm clear on what I know I am uniquely called to do and what I know that I am uniquely gifted and capable of doing, then it's a lot easier for me to deploy my gifts in the organizational setting, and then to help my senior leader who may not have organizational clarity. I know kind of how I can maneuver and how I can lead from the second chair, or serving second, how I can serve second in a impactful way that will make a difference. So really, to answer your question, if you do have a leader that doesn't have, broader organizational direction or clarity, I would say first start with yourself, get clear on owning what is yours to clarify, right?
mm,
What is yours to clarify? And for everyone listening, yours to clarify starts with yourself, right? So who are you? What are your gifts? And then once you're clear on that, then you say, okay, I may not be responsible for setting the destination of the organization, but you are responsible if you're in that second chair, COO, vice president, in that role there, assistant superintendent, assistant principal, right? You are responsible for translating it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that means you have to get ruthlessly clear about understanding the why, right? What are the priorities? I might not understand the full picture, and maybe it's a fog to my senior leader. And so, therefore, I don't really get it, or it's a miss to my senior leader. So it's a fog to me. I don't really get it. But what I can do is know, like, okay, what are we focusing on today? What are our priorities for today? What is the standard behind the senior leader's direction, right? I think sometimes, and I did this and sometimes I have to, like, even in my own private time, of like, man, God, when I was a second chair leader, I think I did okay, but there were definitely some gaps in my own leadership. I could have
Hmm.
led differently. And so a part of me is really thinks about that second chair and says, okay, second chair leaders, you practice clarity by asking good questions, right? You practice clarity by naming trade offs. You practice clarity by helping the team understand what matters most today. Even
Mm.
if you don't know what tomorrow looks like because your senior leader hasn't clarified it on an organizational level, right? You can still become the bridge between what you perceive as the direction and the execution for today. Right. So I know it's a
Man,
really long answer to a great question, but hopefully that, you know,
no, this
addresses
is
kind of what you're
PhD
thinking.
level. And this, you're giving
Yeah.
a master class of what it means to kind of start identifying vision. And what I'm hearing first, and I want to break it down into bite-sized pieces for
Yeah.
individuals that are hearing this for the first time. the first thing I'm hearing you say is there has to be an understanding or a connection with where I'm supposed to be, where I'm going,
Correct.
my area of giftedness first.
Yep.
So for that person that may not have as entrenched spiritual guideline, where does that start identifying? But first of all, because people may sometimes get into a vice president, associate role, assistant role, and based on skill, but never really done that intrinsic work to identify who
Mhm.
I am. Walk us through just briefly what that process was or what it was for you in that journey. Because it's not oh, I listened to a podcast, I'm ready now. There's a
Right.
process, what I'm hearing that has to happen.
Yeah, it's the process of becoming. And so I think there's some things that you can do to engage in greater levels of self-awareness. That's what we're talking about. Like really understanding like, okay, who am I? Where am I going? What are my gifts? What are my passions? Like I know what I'm skilled at, but I want leaders who are leading in the second chair and who are serving second. I want you to feel as though you are leading at the highest version of yourself. A lot of us, we define, leadership based off of John Maxwell's definition. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? And I think that's at its core what leadership is. I like to make it just a little bit more nuanced to say leadership is the ability to deploy the highest version of yourself into circumstances to create outcomes that matter, right? So
Mm,
it is the ability to deploy the highest version of yourself into circumstances to create outcomes that matter. So, in order to lead based off of how I define leadership, you
mhm,
have to know what is the highest version of yourself, right? And so, in order to deploy the highest version of myself, okay, what does that even mean? Well, when I am operating at full throttle, where I am present and engaged, what is that? Like, what are my gifts? What are my skills? What are my abilities? What is the knowledge that I have? Am I aware of it? Do I lead from a place of confidence and humility, or do I lead from a place of like insecurity, right? Where I'm trying to prove myself. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I would want leaders who are just starting, you've just been promoted. I would want you to really think about, okay, what does this role require of me, and how can I make sure that I am deploying the highest version of myself into that role? Now, in order to do that, you might need a coach, right? You might need to surround yourself with some peers who can give you honest feedback. Not might need, you will need
mm,
a coach. You will need to surround yourself with peers, family, friends who can give you some honest feedback, maybe even a therapist to help you work through some of maybe your own self-defeating thoughts or insecurities that you might be bringing into that new role. Maybe there's some imposter syndrome that's taking place that is subtly, subconsciously sabotaging your ability to deploy the highest version of yourself because you're playing small rather than stepping up and leading with bold confidence and humility. So so I think all of those pieces are necessary for leaders to really deploy the highest version of themselves. Gaining self-awareness, surrounding yourself with a community, getting the coaching so that you can know this is who I am, these are my gifts, and I know this is how I am best positioned to serve the organization.
man, if I can summarize it, what you're saying is you gotta be a lifelong learner.
Oh,
Like,
100%. Of
you've
yourself.
got of yourself, exactly.
Yes.
Once you've gotten because people that at this stage, you've gotten a degree, you have certain level skill sets, and that external part is important, but what
Yep.
I'm also hearing you say is there has to be a continual evaluation of who I am and who I'm growing to be because we evolve, we
Yep.
grow, we develop with as our skills change, as our situations change, and understanding who we are, and I love what you said about this idea of having a coach. Like, it's one thing for people to kind of do it by themselves, but what I'm hearing you say is even in the business world, we play basketball, so the idea of having a coach or tennis or golf, there's other individuals, but you're saying even in the business world, it's important to have a coach to help that alignment process. Just real briefly, I know that that coaching lane is kind of where you're going. What benefit would that be specifically having a coach when it comes to alignment, when it comes to clarity for an individual?
Yeah, you think about the highest performers in life. The Super Bowl just took place, and we
Yeah.
saw the Seattle Seahawks go on and win. They would not have achieved that without coaching, right? We think about the greatest basketball players, the Steph Currys and LeBrons, the Jordans, like these phenomenal, phenomenal athletes, right? We think about the Olympics, the Winter Olympics taking place, right? None of this would have happened without coaching. right? And I think in our minds, what we naturally do is we think, oh, okay, yeah, coaching is necessary in those arenas, but it's not necessary in other arenas. And I would say that if you don't have a coach, and I say this with like 10 toes down with my chest out, like if you don't have a coach, you will not be able to live up to the highest version of yourself.
Mm,
You'll be leaving potential on the table. I mean, we know that is true in sports. So why is it that we just isolate it to sports? We know if you don't have a putting coach, a golf coach, a basketball, a coach to help you with your free throws, and like a coach to help you with your form, like if you don't have a coach as naturally talented as you are, you athlete are not going to be able to truly maximize all your potential, because the purpose of the coach is to help you identify blind spots. It is to support your development. It is to hold you accountable. It is to give you the perspective that you inherently don't have, because it's impossible for you to see all things, right? From my vantage point, I see what's right in front of me. I need someone who's beside me, behind me, who can round out my perspective on the situation that I'm facing. And so you have to have that person in your life, or people in your life from a leadership role, who are going to say, okay, here are your gifts, here's your skills, here's the leadership capacity and capabilities that you naturally bring to the table. Let's stretch a little bit. How do you continue to develop this? How do you continue to grow? If nothing else, the coach is there to provide you honest, objective feedback, right?
mm,
And feedback is the tool that increases performance. And the more frequent you get feedback, the more you're able to iterate. And the quicker you can iterate, the quicker you can make adjustments, and you can continue to climb the leadership ladder and the leadership effectiveness ladder. But if you're not getting feedback, right, from your peers, from even your boss, from a coach who's unbiased, who just wants you to win, then it's going to be impossible for you to really be able to make the adjustments, because you're not getting the
mm,
necessary feedback, in real time to make those adjustments. So I have a coach in my life, and every time I meet with him, we meet twice a month. And whenever I meet with him, it's a painful process, as I believe it should be, because
mhm,
he is holding me accountable. He's stretching me. He's pushing me. And that's primarily what a coach does for leaders, is they push you. A mentor pulls you. A mentor is someone who's been where you are, who is where you want to be, and they kind of serve as an example to pull you forward. A coach is someone who pushes you into greatness. Think about when you play basketball. That coach was like, yo, run faster, get on the line, dive for the ball, right? I
yeah,
don't care if you're tired, go harder. Like, they're pushing you, right? Because they believe that you still have more in the tank, because we naturally, as human beings, kind of keep a reserve kind of in place, just in the event that we're not going to go all the way, or we're not going to go all in. And so the coach taps into that reserve bank and says, no, 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 I'm pushing you into greatness. So again, long answer to a great question, but coaching is of utmost importance if you want to deploy the highest version of yourself in leadership.
No, listen, I am again literally a master class, and I don't take this, hyperbole. I don't take this. I don't want to take this lightly. There's really kind of, even for me, like to be honest, I don't have a coach, and when I'm hearing, I'm convicted. Like, okay, I need to step my game up. That's the next
Mm-hmm.
level, because you can kind of learn some things in and of yourself, various degrees, or kind of doing some things with family members. But there's something that happens when you have somebody that sees more, not sees more in you. And I love what you said. The mentor pulls you, and the coach pushes you.
Yep. Yep. But you do have a coach. You just told me you're about to meet with someone who's going to help you with what you're doing with the podcast. And so that is a coach. Now, you might be part of a group coaching model, so
Okay.
it may not be one on one. But even if you're part of a group coaching model, you're saying to yourself, "Hey, I want to get better in this arena. So let me surround myself with someone and some people who are going to simultaneously push and pull me." Right? And so there's peer coaching, right? Where you're around other people who are kind of doing the same thing you're doing, and you're kind of holding each other accountable and pushing each other. Then you have a kind of the guru who is 3-4 steps ahead of you, and you're trying to get to where he is, and he's kind of pulling you forward, kind of showing you where the breadcrumbs are, and kind of what, potholes to avoid. So I would say you have identified an area where you want to grow, And so because you want to grow in that area, you've also identified some inherent deficits that you might have just because you're not exposed to it, because you might lack the experience or the knowledge. And so you've taken the time to invest in a program that's going to help you grow in that area. That is coaching.
Y'all are hearing it and watch this first. Seth is literally doing in his element, coaching me while we're here on the podcast. And that's so important. And it's crazy because because I guess let me just kind of put it in a practical way. It could be possible that you're doing something or individuals are doing some things now and you don't recognize it and kind of don't lean into it. Because for me, it's like, oh, I'm taking class. But from that perspective, in that lens, you're absolutely correct. Having
Yep.
somebody push you and paying somebody to push
Yep.
you. And
Yep.
I do think that there's something that comes with that idea of, hey, I'm investing in my personal growth.
And
And
I'll say this Tucson quickly. If there is an area that you feel like you don't need coaching in, it's probably because in that area you have not set a big enough goal.
stop,
Right.
podcast over. No. That in and of itself is we're going to spend some time just dealing with that. Say that one more time, and we're going to just kind of break that down.
Yeah, yeah. So if there's an area where you feel like I'm good, I don't need a coach. I'm good. I got this. It's probably because you have not set a big enough goal
Mm,
in that area. So if I feel like, oh, financially I'm good. I don't need a financial coach. I don't need someone to kind of help me manage my money and push me and give me insight and feedback. And then it's probably because I haven't set big enough financial goals, right? Like I'm kind of comfortable where I am. But the moment you set a goal that is beyond your comfort zone, what you feel you can do with inherently in yourself, that goal will then require you to get a coach if you're going to take that goal seriously. It's the same thing in the fitness area. If you feel like, oh, I don't need a fitness goal, I don't need a fitness coach, right? Well, it's probably because you haven't set a goal big enough, right? And that's okay. Like you don't have to have like these huge, momentous, monumental goals in every area of your life if you don't want to. Like
mm,
you live your life the way you want to live your life. All I'm saying is I believe that all of us live our lives in such a way where we're leaving potential on the table.
mm,
And a lot of times we're leaving potential on the table is because we either don't believe that we can achieve more or we feel like we don't have what it takes to achieve more. And so we just kind of play it small, whether it's in our leadership or even our spiritual life or with our finances or with our health and our physical life or with our marriage. And I would go so far to say that no, set goals so big that the goal itself requires you to become a different person. And in order to become that different person, you need to surround yourself with a coaching community and mentors who are going to help you become that different person.
family, we should be charging for this podcast. Like, listen, I said, listen here. And Seth, I'm sure you go around. I mean, this is what you do. You go around to
Yep,
organizations and you're sharing this wisdom. And what I'm saying, and the reason why this is so important is because what you're saying is we've got to push past where we're comfortable
yep,
and where we think we're okay and set some goals that are beyond us,
yep,
something we can't do in and of ourselves. And I like that because the reality is there are people that are listening to this that are good where they are. And yet they've
yep,
probably done well. They've pushed themselves. They've
yep.
gotten the right degrees. But what I'm hearing you say is there's more inside of you.
There's more. There's
There's
more.
more inside of you. Go ahead, man. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Just
and I
jump in
mean,
it.
and the only reason why, there may be others, but the few reasons why someone would not pursue more is because they feel like they're good. Like, oh, there's a level of contentment, and I think sometimes we use contentment as the reason to play small, and I say that respectfully, right? We use
Hmm.
contentment as a way to as the reason for why we're not going to continue to push and grow, right? And I just think, man, Christ and God, they have poured out so much so that we can live up to our highest self. I don't want to live my life with leaving anything on the table. I want to say I ran my race. I've maximized everything that was in front of me. I maximized it, I stewarded it, and I know I can't do that well without a community around me who's pushing me.
My next question was, how do you break out of that, ambiguity, trying to
Mm.
support a leader, but then also having some, I guess, fear in and of ourselves? Because I think that's it. The concept of pushing past potential. And I think, what are some barriers to that? And I think the first one is, a fear of, like, where some people may be in this role because they either weren't voted in, they weren't selected for that first position. And I feel like a lot of times second chair leaders say, okay, the only way I can succeed is being in that position. And just a
Just
practical
being
moment,
in the second chair
being
position
in the
or being
first
in
chair
first
position.
chair? First chair,
Yeah.
okay.
The only way I could see it is being in the first chair position. And I felt like that when I looking at The Last Dance and I saw Scotty's reaction to The Last Dance. And he was like frustrated because I'm not getting the same shine that MJ was. But,
Mhm.
that's the reason why I kind of got the book on how to be a Scotty in a Michael Jordan world. And even the outgrowth to this podcast is that, man, there's so much more in areas you can grow in, not having to be in having a specific title. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I feel like sometimes people can get caught in. If I'm, wrong, you're the guru here. So just the idea that, man, I'm looking for this title or this achievement to grow. And what I'm hearing you say is there's way more we have inside of us and that they can give outside of being singularly focused on one particular assignment.
Yeah, why would someone feel a certain way because they did not get selected for a position?
I think that the idea, and that's kind of gets back to when I was talking about the book I wrote, How to Be a Scotty in a Michael Jordan World, because the external factors are saying this is the top, this is the
Right.
best achieving, this is the you didn't get that position, I'm sorry for you. That says, well, I'm not where I
Good
need to be
enough?
based good enough, not yeah, because of that position. And what I'm hearing you say is there's so much more you can do and getting beyond that idea of what the world says or my external um surroundings are saying about what success is.
Yeah, I think it's identity based.
Yeah, yeah, there
I
we
think it
go.
all comes down to who when you look in the mirror, who looks back, right? What do you see in yourself? And the, the call that I believe, and obviously this is from a biblical Christian perspective, the call that I believe that is upon leaders today is to steward well your current role, right?
Yeah,
Steward your current role well while also preparing for the next, whatever that next might be. If the next is the first chair, if the next is a different chair, if the next is, whatever that might look like, I think the way that God looks at us is well done, good and faithful. You've been faithful in the role you were placed. And because you were faithful in that role, now I am opening up other responsibilities to you and for you. And I think so often I'm guilty of it. You may be guilty of it, just human nature is we get fixed on the position, we get fixed on the title, and we're saying, oh, I want that because of whether it's from a purely self-serving perspective because you want to be able to make the last decision and you want to be the one in the control and maybe there's a lot of ego in that, or maybe it's from a more altruistic position where you're just like, hey, I really want to be in a position where I can lead an organization and be the senior leader of that organization, and it's not purely ego driven, but it's just a gifting position. Well, if that's the case, then I believe your gifts will make room for you,
yeah,
right? But if that opportunity doesn't open up for you, I don't think that anyone should feel less than because they weren't selected or they didn't get the promotion or they didn't get the position. I think steward well where you are. There was a leader that I was coaching who was going for the senior leadership role, and they actually served in an interim role in the senior leadership role. So they were an interim senior leadership
mhm,
role, and they went through the interview process. While they're the interim, they also went through the interview process for that
mhm,
role, for the
okay,
senior leadership role. The organizational leaders selected someone else internally. And so it was almost like I'm an intern, but then they selected someone else below me. And so now I kind of go back to my original
mhm,
position and
mhm,
this person
mhm,
gets promoted into the senior leadership role. And as I was just debriefing with that person and kind of having conversation and trying to help them kind of process all of the emotions, the understandable, justified emotions that come with feeling like Why didn't I get it? I was in it as the intern, but you didn't select me. What did I do wrong? And as we were just kind of doing a you know, post hoc and looking at it and saying, okay, what happened here? Um, what we discovered was there was almost like this orientation that said, I deserved it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it should have been mine. I some entitlement, some ego, some of all of that. And I firmly believe that the individual will at some point in their career become the senior leader. I think they're just
Mhm.
gifted and talented in that nature. But it was just no for now. Right. But they saw it as they approach it as I deserve this. And I think that is something that you have to kind of sit with. Like, why do you think you deserve it? Right. What's the story that you're telling yourself around that position that would lead you to the conclusion that I deserve this? I mean, that's a strong word. Like almost like it's
Mhm.
owed to you. And I think as second chairs, leaders who are serving second, I think we wrestle with that. I know I wrestled with that. When I was in the second chair, leading as an executive pastor, there were many people who felt like, well, maybe you should be the senior pastor. And for me, it's like, well,
Mhm, mhm.
you know what? That's
Maybe I
not what
should.
I've been called to right now.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. If that door opens, then we'll have that conversation if and when that door opens. But I accepted this role, right, at the second chair, and I want to be faithful in this role. That's not something I feel I've been called to do right now. And so my responsibility is not to try to position myself so that I can get into that role, but it is to really serve faithfully the person who's in that role, right?
Mm.
To cover them, to pray for them, to watch their back, and to try to deploy my gifts and deploy the highest version of myself so that person can succeed.
Man, listen, I love because still this still connects to what you started initially saying, like having to learn who you are.
Yep.
And now in learning who you are and getting coaching and all those things, my primary focus is to make sure I'm serving. Like regardless of what position I'm in, regardless of where or what title I have, like my main focus, particularly somebody who's serving second, is there's somebody else that you got to pour into. And there's a level of humility that comes with that. But then there's also, man, a level of, man, when you're able to fully embrace that, you never know what other doors open as a
Yep.
result of this. And
Yep.
what I'm hearing you say is as a result of you serving and leaning in, that came vision clarity came out of that.
Yep.
You know, like that was
100%.
a part of what created where you are right now. And what I want to just kind of specifically say is, as I'm kind of just in my heart, I hear just somebody that's watching and saying, listen, I feel like where I am and I'm frustrated. And what you're doing is you're looking at two individuals that served in a secondary role, that served in a
Mhm.
second chair role, and those experiences got us to where we are right now.
Mhm.
And I'm still serving as a individual. I'm serving as a vice president right now. And I love it because you never know what other doors will open, that you can still use your giftedness, you can still use your skill set. So I think is so important. It kind of leads to me to my next question in that what are some kind of daily habits? We kind of looked at it from a helicopter perspective. I kind of get a little bit closer to the ground. What are some daily habits an individual who serves in the second chair can do to make sure they're using their influence properly to help to
Mm.
change the culture for the people that they're serving?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to own your energy.
Mm,
I think as second chair leaders, it's very easy for us to become bitter, apathetic, especially if there's a disagreement, especially if the senior leader is doing something that we feel like, he's not listening, she's not listening. It's very easy for us to become s- that s- to serve second in a way that is trying to also build our own kingdom, right?
mm.
And so it's like I'm serving, but I'm also kind of like, well, if I was in that role, I would be doing it differently, right?
Yeah.
But because they were there, then we need like you have to own that. You have to own your energy. I think you have to develop the habit of really understanding how your tone influences people, that you are not there just to execute work, but you are also there to shape the emotional climate of the work,
Mm,
And so when you walk in the room, how do you show up, right? How do you model being calm under pressure? How do you model curiosity instead of defensiveness, right? How do you model commitment instead of compliance? And so I think as second chair leaders and serving second, I really feel, the habits and the mindset that we have to really develop is, how do I position myself so that my senior leader looks at me as an asset, and I am really helping to reinforce the healthy culture and the healthy climate in our organization by how I'm stewarding my role. Right. So I think that, I mean, and when you say the word habits, you naturally think, okay, that means I show up early, right? That means I
mhm,
stay
mhm.
late, right? That means I demonstrate getting things done ahead of time. Habits meaning like, hey, I communicate often and frequently with people, right? I always give feedback. I always close the loop, right? I don't leave things open ended, right? And so those are habits, right? That you can practice. I always start every meeting, with joy, right? Hey, what makes you excited about today? What's happening? How are you feeling, right? I connect with people on an emotional level. I make it a habit to touch the hearts of my team, right? To really lift them. So I think those are the habits that, yes, you can do and you should be doing as you're serving second. But at the core of that, it's you recognizing I have to own the energy that I bring to this organization, and I have to make sure that I am stewarding the emotional climate. And even if we have, let's just say, worst case scenario, you're operating under, a senior leader who lacks emotional intelligence and who lacks strategic agility, and maybe they are only in that role because they know someone who knows someone, or nepotism or something along those lines, and it feels like they're not best positioned to lead at that level. Okay, how do I still work for their success? Right? How do I
Mm,
still try to cover
mm.
them while also being true and authentic to who I am, not sabotaging, not taking advantage of their weaknesses, but really covering them and stewarding the organization as a whole. I think that's kind of from my perspective, what it means to serve second. It's you are there to support the senior leader and to steward the organization.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I'm so glad you said that because that in and of itself is a gift. Not
Yeah.
everybody can serve. Not everybody can do it without malice, without, and there's some human, angst to it. But I think that is a gift in and of itself, and being able to do that well makes all the difference in the world. Man, I'm really kind of just I'm loving this. But you said something I really just want to kind of go back to and kind of touch on. What happens when there is conflict in the workplace? Let's say if there's a conflict or just some confusion between we're talking about vision clarity. So you have a person in the first chair and as an individual serving in the second chair. What happens when there's some type of um, area that's not clear in that relationship? How do you navigate that and do it at a high level that assists or helps the organization?
Yeah, hopefully you're having regular one-on-ones with your senior leader. You're asking questions in a way where you're seeking information and understanding, and you're not seeking to expose, right? So I'm not trying
Hold
to
on, pause
expose
just a
you.
second. No, I mean, because what you just said really just I don't wanna go past that. You said hopefully. What I'm saying is, and I wanna kind of pause there, like, making that a habit of
Yep,
having those one-on-ones because I
yep,
don't wanna assume I think it's easy in an organization where you have a lot of moving parts where you assume everybody's on the same page after one meeting.
yep.
And what I'm hearing you say is, "Hey, you gotta do that on a regular basis." I'm
Yeah.
sorry, man. I realize that,
No,
and
it's
this is one
good.
of the things that's been helpful, but just having those regular meetings to make sure we're staying in alignment.
Yeah. I think you have to. I've heard someone say, if you don't like meetings, then don't become a leader. Right? That meetings are the way that leaders influence the organization. And so having meetings, one-on-one meetings with your team, with your senior leader, seeking understanding, right? I'm seeking understanding. I'm not seeking to expose you or your gaps or your deficiencies as a leader. I'm seeking to gain understanding so that we can move the organization forward.
Man, Seth, this has been rich, but I know you have a lot going on. I just kind of want to ask you for you're looking here, looking into, we're having a coaching session with a second chair leader. What is one thing you want to share with them as we kind of conclude our time together that will help them
Mm.
navigate Q1 and adjust to Q2?
Yeah, whenever I coach a leader, it's really about the leader. So, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? Where's the rub for you, the pain point, the source of frustration? What's happening in your world, in your organization that I can help support you in. And so the whenever I'm coaching, the coachee leads the conversation, and my role is to then kind of provide the structure for them to achieve the thing that they're trying to achieve. So if I have a leader who's like, "Hey, I want to steward well my current role. I want to deploy the highest version of myself. How do I do that? What do I need to do? Like I want to lead my level very well and potentially prepare myself for the next level if that door and when that door opens." Then we start having conversations around, okay, so where what are your gifts, right? There's actually a formula I like to use. You may have heard me talk about this before. It's K-A-S-H, cash, right? K-A-S-H. And what I tell leaders when I'm coaching them is like everything you've ever achieved in your life is a result of how much cash you have, right? Your
Mm,
knowledge, your attitude, your skills, your habits. Everything that you ever achieved and the current position you're in is because you have accumulated a certain amount of cash, knowledge, attitude, skills, habits that have you've used that cash to purchase your current position, right? You bought your current position with your knowledge, your attitude, your skills, your habits. If you want to operate in your current position well, stay in that position, and prepare for the next position, the question is, how much cash do you need to develop? How much cash do you need to accumulate? So if you want to be a first chair, you want to be the senior leader, okay, how much cash do you need? What do you need to know? What attitude do you need to have? What skills do you need to develop? What habits must you form? And so a lot of coaching kind of revolves around that formula. It's okay, yeah, one day I would like to become a senior leader. I want the promotion. Okay, what do you need to know? Both what do you need
mm,
to know and who do you need to know? Well, we may not know what you need to know. Like you don't know what you don't know. So therefore, we might want to do a 360, a leadership assessment. We'll facilitate a 360 for you so that you get a broad perspective on what are other people seeing about me that I don't see about myself, right? And then from there, we'll say, okay, it looks like other people are identifying that there is some type of gap when it comes to strategic thinking or some type of gap when it comes to emotional intelligence or awareness or collaboration. So now you need to figure out, okay, what are the things I need to know or who do I need to know that can help me close that gap? What attitude do I need to have? Again, that 360 will help you. Like, or do you have this egocentric, kind of driven, manipulative attitude, or are you do have an attitude of collaboration and togetherness? What skills do you need to develop? Skills are more so the technical skills of your job. So maybe you say, hey, to really lead to the next level, I need to develop the skill of being able to think from an enterprise perspective. Whenever I'm talking to senior leaders, a lot of times senior leaders have said to me, the reason why we struggle promoting our second chair leaders, for lack of a better word, our second chair leaders into senior leadership roles is because they lack enterprise mindset. They haven't
mm.
yet developed the ability to think about the entire enterprise, the entire organization, and they're still kind of myopic on just their one area, their one department. So maybe we need to develop the skill of like zooming out and thinking enterprise, right? Which is kind of like strategic agility. How do we develop that? And then habits is the last one. Like, what habits do you need to form? As it relates to positioning yourself for that next level. So in a coaching session, it kind of all comes down to that. I like to tease people and say, listen, the only difference between me and Steph Curry is he has more cash than me, right? As it relates to playing in the NBA, his knowledge is higher than mine. His attitude is different than mine. His skills are slightly better than mine,
Just a little.
right? Just a little bit, right? And his habits as it relates to playing in the NBA are different than mine. He has this amount of cash, and that amount of cash that he has leveraged that cash to purchase the title best shooter in the history of the game. right? If he doesn't have that cash, he can't purchase that title, right? And so it is for you, second chair leader, serving second leader, assistant principal, assistant superintendent, vice president, COO. If you're saying, man, I want to prepare myself for the next level, then it's how much cash do I need to accumulate so that I can then buy that title? And I use that word buy loosely. I think you understand the illustration here. It's with this amount of cash, it now positions me to acquire that next role.
Woo! Listen, people are lining up right now, trying to figure out, hey, how can I connect? How can I learn? Teach me this K.A.S.H system, this Leadership 360. How can people connect with you? I'm sure you're. I don't know if you're still taking new clients, but how can they connect with you to share with you, or have you come and give a keynote about this K.A.S.H system?
Yeah.
What are ways people can connect with you?
Yeah, would love to connect. Go to my website, visionclarityconsulting.com. You have all my information right there.
VisionClarityConsulting.com. If you want to connect with Peter Seth Yelorda, I am so excited about that. I'm sorry, use your government name, man, but but I just want to let you know, man, how valuable you've been to our audience, and thank you so much for that. Family, I am. This has been a great masterclass of what it means to lead with clarity. And Seth, thank you for the clarity and wisdom you shared today. You reminded us that leadership is not just about position, it's about alignment, trust, and helping people see where they're going, even when you're not the one that's in the front of the room. To our listeners, this is the Serving Second podcast. Our family who are in second chair roles, I hope you heard this clearly. Your role matters. Your clarity matters. Your influence matters, even when it's exercised quietly and consistently. We have potential, but you can't leave that potential on the table. So if today's conversation helped you name what you've been carrying or sharpening areas where you need to grow, please make sure you share this episode with someone else who's serving behind the scenes. Until next time, this is the Serving Second podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Toussaint Williams, and look forward to seeing you where you serve. Remember, our mission is greater than our title. God bless, and see you next episode.